Welcome into the Pugs and Parker Pillow Talk Show. Bring in James Parker. We don't waste any time. Monday through Thursday. Here we are.
Hey,
Central Time.
this is great.
All right. Let's see. We bring in E's here. Easier.
Choke.
I think it's amazing how no matter who the guest is, no matter what day it is, no matter what time of year it is, the exact same level of enthusiasm from the crowd. I'm impressed, right?
Yeah.
They're not just phoning it in. They bring it every day.
No, they're consistent.
And Whitney's bringing it. Whitney Balls is already with the Hey Guys in there. So
first in the room.
Keep it going for Whitney.
Pull up a beanbag chair, as I like to say during the noontime show. There's plenty of room for everyone to stretch out and relax in the chat room. We do encourage lively discussion, but I will kick you out if I just think you're an a-hole for the purposes of being an a-hole. Speaking of that, James, do we have Dean Lewis today? I didn't double check.
Yeah, he's probably figuring out the tech as it stands right now. I emailed him the link maybe 7 minutes ago. So,
all right.
I mean, part of that's on me because I was watching the new season of Succession.
Yeah. Hold up. Okay, good. So we got a little bit of time here. I want to go around the room. James, how old is your oldest boy?
I don't know. 12?
You don't know. E, how old is your oldest boy?
My only boy, 11.
Right, so you got 11, we got 12, and I got 13. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here.
Well, I've got a 11-year-old daughter too, so we're really in the same wheelhouse.
I'm more talking about boy stuff.
Okay,
here.
boy stuff it is.
We're dealing with.
So is this where they're going to get their first beer?
What do you mean?
Well, is that what we're talking about?
Whatever you're doing, Pug.
I don't know what we're talking about. No, I'm just saying because we all have boys. I have a question for you. I talked to my son this afternoon, and I called him, and he picked up the phone. And I guess maybe because mine's 13 and you got 11 and 12, maybe you're not there yet. But my son picked up the phone, and I no longer recognized his voice. His voice is deeper than mine. He answered the phone, and I go, whoa, what's that? And he's like, what? I go, your voice. What's this all about? He goes, yeah, I know. You're the second person to say that to me this week. Does it happen that fast? I mean, do our voices drop or mine never did. I mean, I'm a throat
right.
chopper.
Look, the way it's explained in actual acoustics is there is, you know how you talk in falsetto, like yodeling, or there's the time where you've been yodeling your entire life and you finally drop down into what your real voice is going to be, and that is what is experienced because the wavelength.
I mean, that's puberty. Most of us go through it in puberty, right?
But because
12, 13 years old is when that occurs.
Right, but because of harmonics and the way that it breaks down in the sound that you make coming out of your throat, really just comes down to like guitar strings that are in your larynx. They're right here. They're right here. Mm-hmm. And at some point, when they get wide enough and loose enough, they don't just jump down the next note; they jump down the next octave. Is what you're dealing with, and so
it's striking and it's sudden.
Right. And so, like, if at some point, if you're a guy, if you're going to continue to keep talking like this in your falsetto voice, you have to push your throat closed.
Yeah.
And if you don't continue pushing it closed, like you can continue with that fake boy voice for a little while. It'll be harder and harder as time goes on. But it really, because of the way acoustics works, it falls an entire octave in that last growth spurt, and it
was shocking, James. It was shocking. I was just with him last weekend, and he answered the phone. I talked to him last night.
It's overnight.
It was overnight, and he said that I'm not the first person to say that to him this week, and that he hasn't noticed. I mean, he went from he used to have this adorable little chipmunk voice. I mean, yeah, he was 5 years old, and that's what they sound like at 5 years old. Little chipmunks, they're adorable. Now he sounds like a sanitation worker from Cleveland. What's up?
Like I keep getting older, they stay the same age.
That's how that's how the conversation went. I'm like, hey, bud. He's like, hey, dad.
Hey, dad.
And I go, wait, what? He's like, what? I'm like, first of all, what's with the attitude? Because he's always got a pissy attitude because I'm interrupting his game, right? He's in
All
the
right,
middle
well,
of the
my kid is 1 year behind yours,
game. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I'm
but you
butting up
guys hadn't gone through it. So I was wondering if you
no, I
guys.
haven't. I have
Yeah.
not. But I'm butting up against some other questions, like how old does he have to be before we can watch The Big Lebowski together? And I know he's not there yet, but we're getting close.
No, yeah, yes, he is. That's dad's discretion. All those movies are dad's
Okay.
discretion.
Because like also I want to watch Friday with him, but at what? I mean, I can't watch Friday with a 12-year-old.
I've already seen Friday with my kid when when he was 10.
Right.
All you
Or
have to do is
Dad
have
and me.
conversation with them. They see the real world, you know.
Okay.
I have very strange rules about, regarding that stuff, though, James. Didn't we talk about this? Like, it has to be funny. Like, if he's doing something that might be worthy of a, I'm gonna wash your mouth out with soap. If it's funny, I let it slide. Like, if it's done in an attempt to entertain.
Have you watched Friday or The Big Lebowski with your 11-year-old son?
I don't recall either of those movies, but let's just say my son has seen movies that would be considered child inappropriate.
Yeah.
There you
Like
go.
what? I wasn't gonna go there, but I was gonna say, let's not talk to E about this because they love the horror genre in that house. They're big into the horror genre, which I'm not really big in because I'm kind of a scaredy butt.
Well, Wendy's big into the horror genre,
Your kid can sit through a horror movie like no 11-year-old ever has.
It's
Yeah.
supposed to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guest time.
Yeah, guest time. All right, so there you go. You guys have that to look forward to. Your son's voice is going to change, and it's going to happen overnight, and it's going to happen on the phone, and you're going to be shocked. James, take it.
Well, if I'm not sure how to introduce this guy because he was a comedian before he was on the Jagger Show. Then he was on the Jagger Show on the Edge. Then he was on the Jagger Show on Live 105.3, and I think he was on the Jagger Show in some iteration after that. And now he's still a comedic fixture in Dallas. So Dean Lewis, bring it on. Who Killed Live 105.3? Let's ask him.
Are you kidding me?
This is my Christmas. Hello to you,
Local
especially
treasure,
Pugs.
regional I'm sorry, I'm going to clue in Austin, San Antonio. You get all over the place. Regional treasure, Dean Lewis. Look at him.
That is me.
There
I'm
you
like
go.
the only mime in Oklahoma. I'm a rarity.
All right.
Man, it's so good to see you.
Well, yeah, same thing to you. I know, Dean. I know you remember E and James Parker. We're all just a bunch of Live 105.3. What would we be? Alumni? What would we even
Failures,
call that? Yeah.
rejects,
The alumni,
reject-
yeah.
So I'm not sure how briefed up you are, but we are we're going to do a little fun documentary, and we're going to try and tell the story of that radio station from the beginning to the end. We're going to examine some of the causes of its decline, some of the reasons. We're going to pull some things apart, and we're going to tell some stories. And we're so happy to have you to do that with us today.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, that was a magical time in my life. It was pretty good, and a nightmare too, because I was going through a divorce at the time. But it was funny that the listeners picked up on that because we didn't want to announce it or anything, and then people started calling and going, "Is Dean okay?" And they were like, "Why are you asking?" And they just knew. It's weird. They knew.
Oh, that's weird because divorce was a regular topic on the Pugs. It was bragged about. on the
We were
Pugs
good at it.
show.
We were leading the league in divorce.
Right.
Kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Pugs had talked about his, and Kelly was going through one, and we're dividing up assets on the air. It was a great. Time.
Kelly and Shemp divided their assets live on the air. Yes, and it was
Out.
it was 100% real. It was authentic. The lawyers were there, and they were on the air going back and forth over how important was this to you. It was fascinating. It was so yeah. So the audience was well. We talked about this a bit last night with Jasmine, where we talked about the. There was a connection for sure between the content we were creating and the audience and consuming it.
Yeah.
They were connected to us in a way that most radio stations, the ticket has that for sure, where the audience is connected to them. But
Right.
Live 105.3 also experienced that. What do you attribute that kind of thing to?
I think that it was, I'm going to sound all gushy now, but, you could tell you and Kelly and Sybil and everybody loved each other. And I think they could tell me and Jagger and Mondo and Jazzy loved each other, and I think that we let them in. We used to play a game called Ask Us Anything.
Yeah.
And the only thing we said is you can't ask us our addresses. But people would call and we would just tell them whatever. And so it wasn't, a radio mask we were wearing or anything like that. We just, and then the appearances were the best because they would come out and these people are hugging you and, oh my God, my kids love you and all that. So I just think we had something that was, it was pretty magical, man, because we didn't hide or pretend to be something we weren't.
I will one quick follow up, then I'll cede the floor to whoever wants it. But along that same line, the audience, well, how do I say this? We didn't all. Go ahead. Somebody else take it. I'm sorry. It's just completely. I had something that I wanted to say, and I don't know how to phrase it, and it could be offensive if I do it incorrectly. So, James, go ahead.
Well, I want to leave
sorry.
you hanging on the line here. I'm just going to lay out and not do anything and let you awkwardly figure this out in real time.
Well, that's okay because I know E always has a question.
Well, the word that Dean used, we've heard used a lot in magical. I mean, can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I don't want to make this a long story, but I got into radio by accident. I didn't plan on doing it. I was doing a stand-up workshop, and the manager at the Improv, you may remember Trey Blue.
Love Trey. Is Trey
Trey was
still
great.
there? Is Trey still
No,
around?
Trey's long gone. Trey is long gone. It's a different crew
Is
now.
it
They're great
Sean
too.
now, or Sean's gone too?
Sean, Sean got he's working with I'm gonna of course forget his name. The comic or the actor on SNL. I can't think of his name right now. But he's got like a production company, and Sean's putting together comedy shows across the country and going to be producing television shows and all this other kind of stuff.
Good.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to divert you.
No, so it was great. So, I went on the Jagger show when it was back on 102, when it was on The Edge. And I just pitched the show, but we just connected, and this is back when it was Jagger, Julie, and Slim Jim, and the producer Paula. And we just clicked, and it was funny because my intro used to be, has been seen in Las Vegas. Please welcome Dean Lewis, because I used to work Vegas a lot. And Jagger thought I was from Vegas. And I walked in there, and he was like, how'd we get you? I was like, I live right down the street, man. So at the time, Jagger was doing this television show, Change of Heart. And, so he was gone one day a week when he would go up and film all 5 episodes. And so when I was on there the first time, Pugs and James and everybody, I was smart enough to say, well, hey, why don't you guys take my workshop? I got one starting soon. And so they decided to do it. And then I said, well, I'll just come back every week and talk about your progress. So that's how I snuck into being a regular. And then it eventually got to the point where Jagger said, listen, would you mind coming in on the days I'm gone? I was like, no, of course not, because it was free publicity. And then eventually it got to the point where they said, well, we want you on the show. And I was very honored. And, I love Julie and Slim Jim and Paula. But Jagger said, but we don't have any money to pay you. I mean, we want you to come in 5 days a week, but we don't have any money to pay you. He said, I got a bonus. And he said, I'll give you my bonus if you'll come in for the next 6 months. I'll give you that bonus. And then next year, when we all do contracts, we'll sign you on. And
hold on. Let me just stop you right there and throw a spotlight on that. That is something that is not done. Jagger did that for you?
Jagger gets a lot of grief for some, but Jagger's the sweetest, biggest, hardest guy ever.
That's a gesture that is most hosts don't even get their crew a Christmas present. Maybe they'll all go out to dinner. We have the famous Russ Martin story where he took the entire staff out to lunch after they had all just been fired. Mm-hmm. And then what is the kicker to it? At the end, he demanded separate checks.
Yeah.
Even though he was going to be paid off the remainder of his multi-million-dollar contract, and all of his $35,000 a year support staff were shit out of luck, high and dry. He said, Separate checks. Yeah. And Jagger gave you his bonus. So that does need to sort of be talked about here, sort of a difference between the two titans of that station.
Exactly. So that rolled into next time they did contracts, I was definitely a part of the show. And then what happened was, and tell me if I'm rambling too much, but Clear Channel.
No, that's the reason you're here. Please.
Okay.
Ramble
Clear
away.
Channel, who owned us.
Stretch out.
So Clear Channel, it goes back to Clinton when he was in office. He signed this bill, or he passed a law or whatever, where it used to be a company could only own so many radio stations. and he threw that away. So Clear Channel went out and bought a ton of stations. But the problem was,
Deregulation is what you're talking
yeah,
about.
thank you very much. The problem was there was no quality control, and a lot of these stations they bought were not cash cows. So it slowly pulled Clear Channel into it was in the, it wasn't in the black anymore, it was in the red. And the last I heard, they were 20 billion in debt, but that's when we got fired back in the day.
Yeah, I worked at a station in Chicago,
Yeah.
which was run by a guy named Jimmy DeCastro, who was one of the founders of that. When dereg dropped, he went from just owning one station in Chicago to teaming up with J-Corps in Ohio, which was a big Midwestern group. They came together, and then
Right.
that group called themselves, I think, Evergreen Media, and then Evergreen Media got hooked up with who are the people down here in Texas? Hicks's and who's the other guy?
Yeah, that was Ginsburg.
Ginsburg.
Scott.
Yeah. So then DeCastro and his Ohio boys with their network, they got with and at the end of the day, it was Clear Channel. It was the formation of Clear Channel, which would then become iHeart. But before that, before two guys, and in this case, Scott Ginsburg and Jim DeCastro, before two guys owned 700 radio stations, there were 700 guys who owned 700 radio stations. And it was just a different experience to work in.
Don't you think it was better too?
Yeah, I was only there for the tail end of it. But absolutely, when the owner of your radio station has an office on the floor below you, I mean, it just, how many times did people have brilliant ideas, great winning ideas, and it'd go, well, we gotta ask New York. We gotta wait to hear from New York, or if it's Cumulus, we gotta kick that up to Atlanta. There was a time in radio when if you needed $5,000 for something that you thought was going to be a great bit, you could just go downstairs and say to the owner, "There's Mr. Carlson from WKRP." You could pitch Mr. Carlson on what the bit was. That was a way different experience, and radio was better. It was more competitive. The rock stations in each city actually hated each other, and they tried to outwork each other. And the end result was far more entertaining content. Now all the rock stations are owned by the same guy, and they don't want to compete with each other.
Well, it's not only that. Have you ever done this where you're flipping around and one station's playing Journey and the next station's playing Journey and the next station goes, coming up, Journey.
Well, somebody in that station group is pushing Journey today.
Pushing Journey today.
Yeah.
So because of that, what ended up happening was Clear Channel decided they were going to go into syndication. And what that meant was they wanted one morning show to have like 7 different markets.
Right, because then you could fire 6 morning shows. And those are big paychecks.
So that's how we got fired. And, it devastated us. And that was the day my marriage ended too. But that's a whole other story. I'll get back to that in a minute.
Wait, fired from where?
Oh. This was The Edge.
This was The Edge. This was from Clear Channel.
So this is the ramp up to coming over to 105.3.
Right. So luckily, and I hope everyone knows this guy, David Henry.
Sure.
David Henry with 105.3, they'd gone through the Howard debacle of Howard Stern had left, and then they brought in David Lee Roth, and that didn't work. And then they brought in Opie and Anthony, and that wasn't working because what local people want is a local show. They want a connection with them. And these two, guys up in New York, funny as it is, it's not Dallas radio.
Right.
So David Henry, the story I heard is he was just looking around to see what else is on the mornings. Maybe we can replace with something local. And he happened to be listening the day that we got fired. And so we got fired on like a Tuesday, I think. And, it was a nightmare. And then Wednesday, Jagger says, well, we got an offer from another station, from David Henry. And Mondo, Mike, and I went to Jagger's house. And it's a beautiful, such a nice moat. And the servants are so sweet. And so we had this meeting and they're like, well, they're going to bring us into 105.3. But here was the problem. Jagger didn't have a non-compete. So I don't know if everyone knows, but it's basically when you're on a radio station, when they fire you, you can basically not work for 6 more months. And but he didn't have one of those. But Mondo and I did. So they weren't really sure what was going on. So we had our first meeting with Gavin Spittle.
Hold on. Jagger had an agent and you guys didn't, right?
That's part of it. Well, part of it was part of the reason I got fired was we knew that a new contract was coming in, and Jagger said, he goes, you should ask for more money. And I said, well, I don't know how to do this. At a comedy club, I can ask for extra comps. I don't know how this radio world works.
Yeah.
And he says, let my agent take care of it. So he put me in contact with his agent, and his agent was great, but he was this rough New Yorker. And he goes, listen, I don't want a percentage. I'm just doing this a favor to Chris Jagger. But here's the thing. We're going to double your salary to $80,000 a year. Now, they're either going to say yes or you're going to get fired.
Yeah. That's kind of it.
That was about it. And, I had just, my second child was born. We just moved into a new house.
Dean, just make sure you know. He's
Yeah.
doing that as a favor.
Yeah, exactly.
You're welcome. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the mindset was, well, they're not going to fire Jagger. So if Jagger wants you, they're going to, we were, Dallas was the fifth biggest market in America, I think. And we were like the fourth or fifth show. So it wasn't asking a ton of money, but that coupled with they wanted to syndicate and everything. So that's why I got fired. But then, so now we're in this situation where 105.3 wants us, but technically we can't go on the air. So this is what Gavin, the program director, said. He goes, you know what? We're going to call their bluff. We're going to put you and Mondo on the air, but with a caveat, you can't be Dean and you can't be Mondo. So I think this was Mondo Mike's idea that we would come on as these women. And Mondo's character was Dondo Dyke.
Of course.
And I was Gene.
Gene.
And we would just sit there and go, yeah, it's so great to be on the air. And Jasmine, she didn't have enough. So Jasmine could come over. And we originally with, what was her name? Vivian or Vicky?
Val.
Yeah.
Val. So originally it was Jagger, Jasmine, and Val, with special guest stars Dondo Dyke and Gene.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah.
And Val was great. We loved her, but she just wasn't a fit for the insanity that we were doing. So the story is, apparently Gavin said, our program director at The Edge, Dwayne Doherty, who's a great guy, he called Gavin after about 2 weeks of this, and he goes, you know what? We know what you're doing. And we don't really give a crap. They're out of their contracts. Go for it.
Oh, he let you free.
He freed us.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to appreciate that. The rare kindness, the rare gesture of decency from a radio management. Nice.
I know. Bizarre, right? So then, our biggest complaint, our problem was we were on 105, on The Edge, was that, you only get like 6 minutes. And then you got to play traffic and 3 songs and have a guest on and interview them. But
very formatted, very regimented. You got a clock. The PD wants you to stick to it. He's thought long and hard about it. Your job is to do what they want you to do.
Yeah. And a thing we kept hearing from listeners was, we want to hear more about you, because we talked about our daily lives and everything that was going on. But they're like, we want it. So now at 105.3, we could talk about whatever. And so we had basically 4 hours with no music breaks and no, we had to do commercials here and there, but that's when it all started taking off really great. So that's the story of how we ended up there. And
so how did you guys feel showing up at Live 105.3? The station had already been established. I mean, everybody, it was like the new kids in high school. For you, it had to have been odd. Russ was obviously, authoritarian figure. Kelly and I were weird and mercurial. I mean, Richard Hunter, let's not even get started with him. What was up with him? I mean, how did you guys feel walking into
Well, first of all, about you and Kelly and everybody, you guys were so great to us. And that was one of our big fears, is like, God, are we going to fit with them? Are they, they're kind of the, it's Russ and them. Are they going to?
Yeah, crazy to find a radio show that's not mean and doesn't hate everybody else, right?
Right. And, we had that big thing where Sybil would come in about 10 minutes before you guys and write some stuff on the dry erase board. And we always welcomed her. And then we would do crosstalk to bring you guys on.
Yeah.
And we loved it.
Yeah.
The other station, as soon as we were done, we had to get out of there before the next DJ. I mean, you don't really intermingle.
Oh, it was. I'm not sure if it was Jasmine or Jagger. Maybe it was both of them who spoke to just the climate change when they arrived at 105.3. When they were basically coming from an environment like the Edge that was so regimented, as we mentioned, that when they got to 105.3, it was just like, here's 4 hours. See ya. you know.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that like as a creative? Because your job, filling time, creating bits, you must have been working harder, probably more passionately because you had more time to stretch out. But what
Yeah.
was that like for you as a creator?
All those things are true, but then we could just knowing we could do whatever we wanted. I mean, what was the guy's name? I'm so bad with names now. But George, what was his name? We had that name for George, the
Zimmerman.
guy. What was it?
Zimmerman.
George,
Lispy Lynn?
No, it was the little guy.
little
Little
George.
George.
Little Georgie!
We loved him.
Oh.
So one of the things we decided early on was let's make the listeners part of the cast.
Hold on, time out, man. I haven't thought about Lil George. Is he still with us? Does anybody know? Does he have a social media profile or anything like that?
He was on Facebook. I'll have to look. I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah.
That little guy. All right, go ahead, Dean. Lil George, you made him a part of your team, and we stole him from you.
Yeah. Right. But we didn't care because it was family, But like when we could finally be Mondo and Dean, I remember this so clearly. Mondo and I would drive in together because we live like a mile apart. And one morning we're coming in and he needs to get gas. And there's a homeless guy there asking for money. And Mondo gets him in the car and brings him on the air. And just walks in and goes, "Hey, this is Rex. I found him. He's a homeless guy. Just thought he'd be a good guest." And Jagger's like, "Okay, come on in, Rex."
Was he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And after about 10 minutes, we realized he was a little. So we're like,
Oh, you
"Well,
don't
thanks so
say.
much, man." And we all gave him some money and sent him on his way.
Yeah. Like, how many miles from where he was?
Yeah. Right.
Like you picked him up where? And then you're like, all right, we're done with you, Rex. You're 10 miles from where your bag of garbage is, but
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's like
You're
that.
welcome.
Stephen Wright, who has that joke, he says, "What I love to do is pick up hitchhikers, then make a U-turn."
just go the other way. All right, so go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm occupying the flow of conversation.
No, please jump in there. So, we could just do whatever we wanted. And Gavin was, yeah, just go for it. That'd be great. And, one day we did, we were giving away some concert tickets and we just said, "Hey, the first 3 guys who come down here, we're going to have you do underwear races down the hall." Remember the narrow hall?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And these 3 guys came and they stripped down to their underwear and we filmed it, them racing down the hall on their hands and knees. Their knees are torn up so they could get tickets to something. I don't remember what. So, we would just do whatever. It was never, Jagger didn't really, he said, "Okay, we're going to cover this today." But a lot of times that would go out the window and it was just so freeing. And, part of the problem, I don't know if you talk about this, but when when the whole thing happened with Russ and he was gone, then we flipped to a sports station and Tom Bigby came in, so regimented, and we couldn't do anything. He killed the show from the first day on. He killed the show.
Yeah, that's why that station, in terms of the era that it existed, was so special because that just didn't happen. Program directors were making six figures, and it was because they had clocks and they had winning strategies, and the talent was really just sheep, being bossed around by that. Not at this station, and that's why a number of people have said, and I've echoed it myself. We were the station that was like, we were the skankiest station in town, but we really were skanky. Like we weren't,
Yeah.
we were the girl you hook up with, not the girl you bring home to meet your mom,
Right.
We're the girl you cheat on your wife with. That's what Live
Right.
105.3 was. All right.
But we're the more fun girl.
Right. So anyway, my point was, God, this is the second time tonight now. I've forgotten my train of thought.
We're skanking.
You said that we were the skanky station.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were skanky.
Got it.
It was a question. It was a really good question too. James, go ahead.
All right. Hey, so one of the things that keeps coming up about, and this station was only like for 8 years, but the live events that would happen. And when I say live events, I don't mean live on the radio, but the live 105.3 events that we would happen. There was a tendency for wild stories to come out of that, whether or not our program director got tackled into a pool or Pantera showed up and we all end up at the clubhouse or
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So do you have any stories about the crazy events that were happening adjacent to Live 1053?
Well, I don't know how clean we have to get this, but when I
None.
announced I was
No, well,
getting
not at all. But
okay,
Dean's like one of the nicest, boy next door types.
yeah,
I don't
so
know. Is he going
boring.
to give us the good dirt?
So the
Did you
good dirt is,
would you crack with
because
a
when I
whore on
announced
Lake
that I was
Louise?
going,
I mean, what do you got for me?
I got a lot. So when I had announced I was getting divorced on the air, and I know I'm not a handsome looking guy, but all these women started, and this was back in the MySpace days.
With Tom.
And they were like, "Hey, I'm so sorry you're going through this. If you ever want to have lunch and talk about it." And I was so naive. I was like, "Yeah, let's go good." And the next thing
Why
I
not?
know,
This is great.
I'm in some girl's apartment and there's just things going on. And, this is when I have two little boys. I'm going through divorce, but the weekends they were gone was great. Um, so,
Yeah, there were some fringe benefits to being on the skanky station.
yeah. And the
And by the
girls
way,
weren't,
the point I was trying to make, we were the skanky station, but other people have said it, and I've said it myself. Whenever we would encounter people from other radio stations in the market, they were all jealous. They all wanted to work there. They wouldn't admit it because we were like the skanky station, but they'd be like, "What's that like? How much fun do you guys
It's a
have?"
fun format.
Yeah.
so much fun. We have so much fun. So I remember one time I was doing stand up. It was at talk about one of these events. I was doing stand up and Mondo and Jagger are there. So for whatever reason, Mondo's such a wild card, and he's a loose. Some people don't like him, but if once you get it, you just love the guy to death. And they were going to do this sumo. Remember the sumo wrestling suits people used to wear,
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
So
Big
it was going to
inflatable.
be me doing stand up, then it was going to be him doing like a Mondo sumo wrestling thing. And listen, it wasn't a place to do stand up, and I freely admit it wasn't the set of my life. It wasn't going great. But I'm struggling to get to that 15-minute mark. And in about 12 minutes, I get this big emotion from the audience. They're like, "Woo, yeah." And I was like, wow, that joke killed. But then I started seeing everyone was looking past me. And I looked, and Mondo's in his bloated sumo suit, dancing behind me, stealing the stage. I was so pissed at him. I was so pissed, because I was like, dude, let me just die. But he wasn't, he just
You
in
guys,
his mind thought, well, I'm just going to go out there and screw around now.
you guys were a good partnership, though. You worked well together because the balance, and I'm sure this is what Jagger saw when he got you two together, seated next to each other. There's you, who I've described as sort of this boy next door, very kind, yes ma'am, thank you ma'am, all that kind
Right.
of stuff. And then you've got Mondo, who is essentially Belushi in Animal House. And,
Yes,
and you two are like forced in the back seat of a long car ride. That's what the two of you were like.
that is perfect. That
Slap
is
fights
perfect.
and all that. What you
So
go
there
ahead.
was that night, but just so to follow that up. So this is an example of what we do. So on Monday we were talking about it, and I was ticked off. And Mondo's like, "Well, I didn't get it." And I said, "Yeah, you don't get it because you've never done stand up." I said, "You know what? If I get you a spot at the Improv, I want you to do stand up. I'm going to get my revenge." I said, "You got to do it this week. You don't have any time to put it together. Go up and do stand up at the Improv." And thinking, all right, now I'm going to teach this piece of crap a lesson. And he goes up, and the manager's like, "We want to hire him." I was like, Jesus.
You
Revenge
killed.
is not mine.
He killed it.
Natural.
He killed.
He didn't kill it so much as because we promoted it, it was a full house, and they wanted to hire him because they knew, hey, Mondo's here, they're going to get a full house.
I
That's
guess you showed him.
God.
Yeah, so it's stuff like that. We did you guys ever do anything to each other on the air? Did you ever prank each other or try to set each other up for anything cruel or mean?
well, mean. Yeah, we were really mean to each other. We used to beat
Yeah,
each other with sticks. Do you remember
yeah.
that game? Do you remember I don't know if you read James. Do you remember the game Whack a Stick?
Yeah, and usually end up whacking Eric for some reason.
Well, because he was dumb and he would get it wrong. Here's a game we used to play, Dean. We would all have these giant bamboo rods in our hands, right? And we'd have Trivial Pursuit cards. And you would
Mhm.
go to each person and you would say, all right. And you would just ask them a random Trivial Pursuit question. And while they thought, you would beat them with sticks. Just why I
Who
think about it.
But that's
Who
such
is
good
it?
radio.
Yeah. It just
Who is it that we had go in like a padded suit and run around Top Golf, and we were trying to hit him with golf
I think
balls?
that was Paco. It was either Paco or Cody. Yeah, where we
It's
put them in
Cody.
Oh,
like
I remember Cody too.
they
Yeah.
weren't a padded suit. They had a padded suit, but they were dressed in a knight's armor. They like had knight's armor and like padding underneath.
Imagine that. Like, how did we even get like
How did
a golf
How
ball?
did Top Golf allow that? We're going to do this bit, okay? We're going to send
Yeah.
a producer out there, and everybody's going to be hitting golf balls at him.
And we
Great.
hit him a bunch of times.
But don't you think it was back in the day when being on a radio station meant something, and they would
Yeah.
do it just because they're like, oh, they're going to tease it all week. It's going to fill. Now it's not like that anymore. But another time, Jagger and Mondo always have bets, and one time Mondo lost a bet. So the loss was I shaved his eyebrows off on the air.
Mondo's?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. That's great.
Yeah. And Mondo's got a thinning hairline, so it's just a big baby butt, from his eyes up.
No.
And we'd always set Jasmine up. Sometimes like guys would call and say, I really want Jasmine to I really want to come in there and lick Jasmine's feet. And Jagger would say, well, can you get down here?
More with the feet. We
So
did
this
like
one guy
25
came down and
minutes.
was sucking her toes and stuff.
We did like 25 minutes on her feet yesterday. Ugh.
Oh,
He
really?
got he got ooked out about it.
How did that start, Dean? That was just some listener wanted to lick her feet, and then it took off.
Yeah,
from there?
just Jasmine was, she was like our sister,
Yeah, she was the show's little sister. She was
right? But
bunch of
everybody
raucous
wanted
boys.
everyone wanted to bang her.
On your show.
Not on the show. No, we didn't. The listeners would just they were hot for her all the time. So
Oh yeah, well, I had one of those too. We called her Sybil. And
yeah,
that-
you did have Sybil. What is Sybil
hot.
doing these days?
Still hot.
Still hot?
Still hot.
Run
Sis-
around being hot.
Sybil's crushing it over on afternoons on. Is it K Love? Oh, KRLD. I think it's KRLD.
Wow.
I don't know.
It's
I,
like
got-
1037, isn't it? Or
I don't
1029?
need to know it because it's programmed on my car radio, and whenever she's on, I listen to her.
Just listen to her.
Yeah.
But Pugs, doesn't it make you feel good that, that show, and I want to know what Kelly's doing too, but I mean, James, Sybil's got to stay, you left a mark in that a lot of these people are still working. I think that says something about the level of, what
Yeah,
they're
I
doing.
mean, I'm really proud of the people, that somebody who I'm like really boastful of, and I shouldn't be because she never worked for us, but she did so much for us over there. She may as well have been an intern on the show, and that's someone that you would have known from the Improv, Christella. She's the one that I think. Oh my God, she had her own TV show on ABC.
Her own TV show. She's had 2 Netflix specials.
The
And
girl
she's got
who used to
another.
bring-
She's got another sitcom coming up. I can't remember where it is because I just
She's
worked with her a few
huge.
months ago.
She's
Huh?
a primary voice in Cars.
Yeah.
I
She's on the View all the time.
Oh my God, she's huge. And she was the girl who sold the tickets at the Improv while
Yeah.
Dean was rocking the stage. I mean, that's got to be kind of cool for you, right? I mean, everybody at the Improv's got to be really proud of her.
Oh, they love her. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And her, and then Paul Varghese. I've been teaching the stand-up class since I think 2000 or 2001.
Did she take your class?
She took my class, and when I just worked with her this last time, she made a point every night to say, when I started here, I was working in the office, and I decided to take Dean's stand-up class. And she goes, if all of you are fans of me, it's because of that guy you just saw.
Oh,
Wow, that's really cool.
nice. Yeah. Yeah, she's cool. She was always so helpful, and she was
So
always
great.
She was
Yeah.
always involved with doing something for the station. I mean, she's like the one that went on to be the biggest.
I know, isn't that hilarious?
Awesome. It's awesome. Couldn't have happened to a more deserving
All right,
individual.
Dean, tell me your story of the day of the flip, because we were asking everyone for their story, and when did you first hear the marching band or know that the station was gonna flip? What's your story? What's the angle from you on that day?
I can say anything I want, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the story, what I remember, is that they decided to let go of Russ. And the reason they did that was because, part of what was the death of us is they started, it used to be people would listen and they had a diary. And they would write in the diary, oh, I listened to this station today, I listened to that station today. And Russ was number 1 in the market. But then they came up with these sayings, no one knows. They're called people meters. And they're about the size of a credit card. And if you're one of the people chosen to do the people meter,
Yeah.
you wear that 24/7, not 24/7, but you wear it all day. So let's say you hate country music, but you work in a warehouse where 8 hours a day, the country station's playing. So now the country station's getting all these ratings. So they put those out there. They're getting rid of the diaries. They're using the people meters. I don't know if they still use those. But the story I heard was that Gavin went in and told Russ, he goes, well, we've got your ratings. And Russ said, am I number one? And they go, no, you're not.
Your people meter numbers are no bueno.
Right. And they said, we've got to talk. And they said, we got to talk about it because there's things we can do that can bump it up. He said, I'm not changing a thing.
Oh.
So what I heard, he was 16th in the market. He went from 1 to 16.
Well,
And-
yeah, and I want to correct the record on something here. And
Yeah, please do.
He's dead. You said that he was number one. He was rarely number one. He said he was number one. He went on the air and he would read diaries and he would give himself inflated numbers and say that he's tell his audience that he was number one in the market. But he almost never beat the hard line. There were a couple of instances where there were anomaly books, which, James, you know what those are. Those are just when a station spikes for some reason and it passes up. Yeah, and you pass up a long-standing number one for a period of time.
Okay.
But then you come back down to earth when it levels back out. That was always something that bothered me. We would Kelly and I would do extraordinarily well in our ratings. We'd hit all of our bonus. We'd get all of our things. We'd have this big ratings breakdown with the sales department and the general manager. Congratulations, everybody, be happy. I'd get in my car. I'd drive home. I'd hear Russ reading the ratings, and then somebody would go, "What about Pugs and Kelly?" And he'd say, 25th out of 26. He'd just lie about us. He would poison the well to our audience. After we were just, so I always like to push back when people are like, he was a dominant number one. No, he fucking wasn't. No, he really wasn't.
Right. It fooled me. But the story I heard is that they're like, well, no, you're 16th. He says, I'm not changing a thing. And they, the higher ups in New York that owned us said, well, we're not going to, if he's not going to play ball, we're going to get rid of him.
He's a guy who benefited greatly so, and a lot of people who are on personality radio benefit from that. And this is that he's employed not necessarily because of ratings, because of the numbers, but because the advertisers are sold out. It's because the people that he does have, he can motivate them to buy product and move shit off shelves. That's, so we're actually, that's where we are now in radio, where you don't actually have to be number one anymore. If you're number one, but your audience ain't buying shit, it doesn't matter. But if you're number 10 in the market, but you can pack 300 people into a bar every time you do a live remote, you're going to be golden. That's all that counts. And
well,
Russ benefited from that.
I'm going to announce I'm coming back to radio because I could be number 20.
Yeah,
I could easily do that.
Well,
I want to hear your fired story.
So we heard that. And then they're like, well, we're going to let Russ go and we're going to flip to a sports station. Now, I know about as much about sports as Amish people know about the internet. I knew I was effed immediately. I was like, I'm not a sports guy. I don't watch it. I don't enjoy it. I've got nothing to add to the conversation. So I knew the clock was ticking. And then this all happened so rapidly. And then Bigby showed up. Now, Bigby is, listen, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. But Bigby convinced me there's a devil.
I've met a few of those types.
Because as soon as that guy walked in and I saw in the background as the door was closing, crows flying in a circle. Yeah. And he didn't cast a shadow and he smelled of sulfur. So the guy was the devil. And he came in and we had a meeting with him and he told us, well, you're a lifestyle show. Sports is not really what you got. We're a sports station now. We're the Cowboy station. But then, you guys are the lifestyle show. You're morning. So you'll talk about sports a little bit, but then it was all about sports. And again, we never had to do prep. But then he said, I want all of you to send Jagger 5 stories every day by 11 o'clock that can be used on the air the next day. And so again, Jagger, I love him, but Jagger was always marching by the beat of who was paying the check, right?
Right.
And so there was a change in the force, so to speak. My spider sense was, so I knew, James, I'm giving a long-winded answer, but I could tell, I'm like, I'm not long on this boat. I know that it's coming soon. And then one day, Bigby so we always had after show meetings, and Bigby comes in and sits down. He goes, Dean, what the hell are you doing? You were making fun of retarded people. You know how many listeners we have who have special needs kids? What the F are you thinking? Like, he ripped me a new one for 2 minutes. And this is the reason I love Mondo. And Mondo raised his hand and goes, Tom, that was me. Dean didn't say anything.
Oh, not paying attention. Where you, boss?
Not paying attention. And he doesn't miss a beat. And he goes, Mondo, what the hell are you He said that it's like he had it prepared.
Moves right to Mondo.
Right to Mondo.
Duly
And then there was another time when all of us, like all the stations were in this big place, and Bigby goes up and he's calling out radio stations. And then it was just me. Jagger had not shown up. Mondo wasn't there. It was just me. Jasmine wasn't there. And he looks up and he goes, we've got Jagger here. He says, Jagger, stand up. I look nothing like Jagger. So this is how disconnected the guy was. So to get to your answer, one day we just did the show, and then because I've been fired before, I know how this goes in radio. And right after the show, HR came in and said, hey, Dean, can you come with us for a minute?
Fired.
It's like, sure. So I knew what it was. And I go in, and it's Bigby's office, this big corner office. Now we're at the station. Now we're in this high tower off of Central. And, it's not 105.3, which was just so ghetto, but so classic. And
it was our skanky clubhouse.
It really was. It was the shit stain, open 24/7 that you'd never wanted to leave.
Everybody else in the station cluster was in that beautiful building with all the modern stuff. And then us, the cash cow, the money makers, we were in some barn in the worst part of town.
And remember, you get there in the morning and there was the
Metro.
security fence that would open, and there's barbed wire on the top.
Yep.
183 in Metro Media.
Yeah.
I love that spot because you could drive down the street and get on a dead end and get baked
Yeah, there was.
before your show. Like I would just like crawl in that, like down in that cubby down there, and I would just get like fried and then come on in.
Forgot about that.
Oh, the best,
Such a
right?
sketchy area. Hey, good, easy access to the church's chicken, though. That's always nice.
Yeah. And then that gas station that turned into Massimo's Bakery.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
It was the old Warsaw. He like turned the gas station, like they left because they were some like Iranian terrorists or something. And then he took the gas station over and then he like turned it into a bakery.
Yeah. That was great, and it was successful. So
the funny part about it was, if you look right across the street, if you keep walking across 183, you're in the back parking lot of Silver City Cabaret.
Yeah,
you are.
Yeah, and we actually had a lot of events there, and they were sponsors on the show. And like every Saturday for like a year, we had our own little cigar show over there.
I remember that. And remember, we used to have porn stars on all the time.
Oh yeah.
Oh, dude,
I still have like 3 autographed porn movies sitting somewhere.
Look, man, porn stars, wrestlers, and NASCAR drivers. That was the cornerstone of that station, man. If you were in the WWE, if you were doing porn, or if you were driving a race car, you were
that's
on that
true.
station.
Right, and there's some weird echoes that happen because of that. So when I go, like after I left Dallas, I did Oklahoma, then I did Sirius, then I ended up in New Orleans. And after a while in New Orleans, we had this new sponsor for our station. It was Larry Flint's Hustler Club on Bourbon Street.
Nice.
And they also have Barely Legal, Larry Flint's Barely Legal on Bourbon Street. So
They do not.
yeah. So hell yeah, they just swear to have my bachelor party. So they would bring through the girls on the circuit that were coming in that weekend. And look, you got to do 6 months. You're contracted into 6 months of stripper interviews on Thursdays. They were worried. Because we're on with like Glenn Rush and Sean Hannity. Like that's our station, right? But I'm popping out ideas. It's like, all right, so when the girls come in this week, we're going to ask them sex ed trivia question. And then when the girls come in this week, we're going to ask them Dora the Explorer trivia questions. Or, I had all these like ideas for all the stripper stuff. And they're like, why do you know so much about strippers, James? How do you have 18 stripper bits just already in the can?
Yeah.
Oh man, you remember
got,
I got years of this stuff.
got
We used to do the
notebooks
one
filled
where
with
we had
stuff.
one of our games was family fornication. That
I
was a
promise
bit
you.
Jagger came up with, and someone would call in, and I would write them. So again, I'm the I'm the OP of the show, but I would write these, and it was questions like, if let's say your mom and dad are having sex, and your mom just basically dries up, and your dad goes crazy if he can't climax. So to keep your parents together, would you give him a hand job? I mean, that's the kind of questions we would ask.
Oh, no.
See, fun to listen to in 2005. That
Couldn't
hurts
do
the
it
ears in
today.
2023.
I am so
Yeah.
offended. Oh my God.
So we would do,
Well,
but
it's just a
we got
crime
away with
case.
so much. And by the way, I want to say hi to Whitney and Jennifer. They're saying hi to me. So but yeah, so anyway, just to wrap up, James. So Bigby was just very cold-blooded about it. And but I'll tell you all a secret. I knew I was getting fired the day before. You want to hear this story?
Yeah.
I knew the day before. And
How'd you
here's
know?
how I knew. So we couldn't be after the show, we had to go sit in the office until we were dismissed. We couldn't just leave. So we were sitting there for like 20 minutes, and Jagger was nowhere to be found. I thought he was off cutting a commercial or whatever. So I just went to go look for him because Bigby wasn't even there that day. And I went to go look for him to see if we could leave. And it was some other guy, program director. I don't remember who he was. But I heard Jagger's voice. So I wasn't like listening with the glass against the wall. But I heard Jagger's voice. So I was just going to knock on the door. So I walked up. And as soon as I walked up, I heard Jagger saying, well, as long as we're keeping Jasmine, then we can still do this.
Oh, that's good.
Oh. So were you sure it wasn't Mondo?
Well, because
And
he said
you?
as long, but I knew Bigby hated me and he hated Mondo.
Yeah.
And he didn't say, well, as long as we're keeping Mondo and Jasmine, we can still do whatever. He said, as long as we're keeping Jasmine, we can still do this. And I knew.
That's a rough way to find out. That's a good my
Well, I never told Jagger that. I'm giving you guys this secret.
Yeah.
No one knows that story but you guys
wow.
know.
Well, maybe we can follow up with Jagger. See what he has
Yeah.
to say about that. Maybe we'll turn this into a nice little dramatic arc in one of the episodes. See, these things evolved in front of our very eyes.
I'm also concerned about Matt here. Family fornication was the best. That sounded like a pretty horrific bit, Matt.
Yes.
Oh, because we would push and people would call in and they really wanted tickets or they really wanted something. So they had to answer the question. We say, now you got to answer this honestly. And I would just try and come up with the most disgusting, horrible, uncomfortable situation you could possibly think of. And
That's so not like you. That is not the Dean Lewis that I enjoy.
Pugs, we need to take a road
Jasmine
trip so you can
indicated-
get to know me better.
I like sitcom dad Dean Lewis. That's the Dean Lewis I like. I don't like
Right.
this.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love the horrid how you got fired stories. I got a quick one for you about how I
Yeah,
got
tell me.
fired.
So how did you guys find out?
Well, no, this is just a terrible radio.
Okay.
It was Father's Day, and I was over at my father-in-law's for Father's Day, and I came home, and there was a message on the answering machine. It's my boss, and he's like, "Hey, Pugs, just want you to know you're gonna read something in the newspaper tomorrow. I don't know where they got this stuff from. You know how these people are. Don't you worry about it. Don't believe a thing. Come on in. Everything's fine. I promise." I'm like, the fuck am I going to read in the newspaper? Wake up. It was the morning show I was on. So I wake up at like 3:30 in the morning. It's cold. It's winter. I go to the store. I get my coffee and I grab my newspapers to drive into the station downtown. I'm stuck sitting there at a stoplight and I glance down at the front page of the newspaper, and on the front page it says I've been fired. Right? Man cow to Q101. And I'm like,
Man cow.
oh, yeah. So I almost turned around and went home. But that's the duplicity of the radio manager. I kept that message on my machine for years after that, just to remind me of how never to believe a goddamn thing these people say. Because you know what he was worried about? He didn't want to have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning with us knowing that we'd been fired and then us having live mics. So he was afraid, you know what I mean? So he wanted to head that off. So meanwhile, we all get there in the morning and we're all like, "Are we fired?" And they're like, "Well, I got a call from Dyer." His name was Dyer. "I got a call from Dyer. And he said we're not." And I'm like, "Yeah, he left a long message on my answer." So yeah, radio's rough. Let me ask you a couple of names, Dean. Okay?
Yes.
I want to do this. I want to throw out a couple of names of people who worked at 105.3, and I want you to just kind of give me a nice little 30 seconds to a minute rundown on them. Okay.
Okay.
We'll start out with, let's go with my partner, Kelly Moore.
I loved her. I always thought she hated me. I always thought she hated us.
A lot of people thought Kelly hated them. It's not true. She doesn't hate the people who Kelly really hates know that Kelly really hates them.
That's what I also thought. But
Yeah.
I adored her. What's she doing now?
Nothing.
She's
Nothing?
down in she's down in we might be hearing from her. She's already been interviewed, but we might bring her back. I want to talk to her about some things concerning us.
Yeah, I was a big fan of hers. I thought she was great, very pretty, and she was very sweet to us. But there just always seemed to be like, you know, when a mom has had enough.
Yeah, that was her brand.
That was her tone with us all the time.
That was her brand. She was the frazzled mom who was probably on pills, you know, because her world was insane and she was dealing
Yeah.
as best she could. That was her brand. All right, let me ask you about Russ Martin.
You know, I went to college with Russ.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Well, just once we took this voice class, and just one summer, and
What was
I
it like
gotta
in college?
say,
What kind of a what before being affected? Because I believe he was greatly affected by his fame. Before that, what was he like in college?
basically the same but awkward about it. Like he wasn't, you know, he had such huge huevos about stuff. Like he would just, and he would be careful about that. Like he would try and be, he was trying to be the smart ass and trying to be the funny guy, but he didn't have the heart to sell it. And he was just a pretty nice guy. But so I took this voice class with another friend who went to high school with Russ. And he was like, you know, he was always a jerk. He was always being mean to girls just to get, you know, he's the kind of guy who pulls their ponytails to get their attention. And, you know, but I know he's got my friend Jim Flory said he's got these big aspirations, but I just don't see this guy's ego is unbelievable. So he was just in his, you know, beginning
Oh, the
stages
ego
of
was
it.
there. The ego
The ego was there. Yeah.
That's interesting.
But then when we went to 105.3, I tried to talk to him a couple times. He was very standoffish and he was very much like, you know, his people surrounding him wouldn't let me go talk to him. And to me, I was like, well, dude, we're all working under the same roof. Why can't I talk to the guy? And I know him from college. I just want to say hi. And I finally would say hi and he'd just be like, wouldn't even acknowledge me. And I was like, well, what a jerk.
Yeah.
But what a sad ending the guy had, you know, I think.
Well, we haven't really explored that yet. We got to try and figure
Yeah.
out how to do that. I was rereading today. Do you guys remember the incredible Richie Witt article that he did on Russ Martin?
I do. Richie Witt, what a gift that guy
That's
is.
terrific. So I'm trying to write about 5,000 words on Russ Martin, trying to explain him for the narration. And I went back and I'm reading. It's like 10 pages. James, did you read that? Emil, did you read the Observer piece that Richie Witt did on Russ Martin back in 2007?
For some reason, I remember it. I don't know that I completed it though.
Staggeringly.
Well, see, I
Cutting.
just reread it about a month and a half ago after you.
Oh, good. So you're familiar with it.
Yeah. After you
Yeah.
gave the announcement, that was one of the things I stumbled on because I've been gathering a bunch of pictures and B-roll and stuff to use for the project. And what I remember is not so much everything that he said in the article, but I remember reading this when I first saw it, and I think it was 2009. I think was the year it came out.
Sounds about right. Yeah, somewhere in there.
And so I was more remembering where I was the first time I read it because it's not that it was shocking. It was the sort of cathartic confirmation that I needed because
Thank you.
this is what I thought this guy was living. This guy was living in a fantasy world. And as soon as you take away this platform that was supporting his grandiose delusions, that he would come crashing back down to reality. And instead of playing a concert to thousands of people, he's playing a concert to a handful of folks when it's 104 degrees outside. No one really gives a shit.
In a parking lot of a Sam's Club.
And-
Richie writes so well. I mean, he just paints that picture so
I
well.
love Richie.
Right. And it's like when people brag that this isn't political, but like when people say, well, Greg Gutfeld on Fox News is beating all the late night talk shows, it's like, it's the platform. When they had Shannon Bream on there before, she was getting higher ratings than the late night talk shows, and they weren't necessarily considered competing. It's the platform, and what Russ didn't realize is he was benefiting from the platform. And if you stuck, I can name 30 other guys that if you stuck in that spot, they would do just as good, if not better, than Russ did. And he didn't realize that. It wasn't he was good. He was good at what he did, but there's a lot of other guys who could have done just as well had they been given that opportunity.
I like
You know,
what you said about the article being cathartic to those of us who knew that it was for the first time that I can ever remember having existed in this tank, this aquarium with this guy for all of these years, seeing him close up, seeing the way he treated people, the way his demeanor was, the way he carried himself. And then also knowing how untouchable he was as far as, getting away with these kind of things. Richie's article was the first public recognition of what we had all seen. That we had told people, what's Russ Martin really like? We'd be like, he's a fucking dick. And they'd be like, no. We'd be like, yeah. And now at least there was somebody from outside writing in detail about what this guy was really like. It was.
I remember it now. I remember. Yeah, I remember. Cause we talked about it. That was like years ago.
Yeah, it was
Holy
terrific.
crap!
All right, so let me ask you, Dean.
well,
Gavin.
can I just tell you real quick, 2 quick Russ Martin stories?
Yeah. That's
So one is, he loved Jagger. He loved Jagger. And part of it was because he could do all the gay jokes at Jagger's expense. And Jagger kind of, he lets that roll off his back. Is that a gay joke? But but they were kind of friends. And Jagger told me, he said, in private, Russ was always asking about me. He goes, how's Dean doing? Is he having, so there was a side to him. But the other side is, remember when he had that situation, Russ, I'm talking about, where what was it? He hit his girlfriend, or she said that he beat her. There was something going on.
No, he hit her early on.
Yeah.
And he got in trouble.
And so there was one day when all of us at 105.3, I think I know Sybil was there because I was bowling with her. We were doing this like at a Strikes bowling alley. We were doing some come out, meet all the 105.3 people. And Russ was there. But this bowling alley had big screen TVs over every lane with the news playing in quiet and silence. And Russ walked in as the local news was playing his
burp walk in the orange jumpsuit.
Right. Yeah, and Mondo was elbowing me, and we were just dying laughing. It was one of the greatest moments ever. So that's my other Russ story. So I just want to squeeze that out. But what was the other question? I'm sorry.
You had a second Russ story.
Well, the first one was that he was nice about me to Jagger. So he wasn't the total jerk I thought he was. That I was always
There's a human down there somewhere. And I like these stories because we're trying to find out this guy, not a psychopath, definitely. He's not even a sociopath. He's a person who is capable of a legit human connection. He's just a wounded animal.
Don't you also think that he just anything for attention? That was my impression of him when we were in college together. And the other thing about how they were always drinking on the air, but they were never really drinking. It was always just sound effects.
Well, we've heard a couple of different versions of that. We've heard people mention the sound effects, but Dan O'Malley says it was real.
See, and I heard they would drink water they had like Jack Daniel's bottles, but they would drink water out of them.
Yeah, I think James Amel, correct me if I'm wrong here, because Dan was a little bit, I'm not going to say, he wasn't direct. He was colorful in the way he described it.
O'Malley said sometimes it was fake,
an alcoholic,
but
right?
quite often.
Hold on, wait a second. Let's establish this. Didn't Dan O'Malley give us the impression that he thought he was an alcoholic, right?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
There was no equivocation about that because he also said because I myself.
See, that's my problem. I think there was some equivocation. I think he was trying to be delicate about it, and I want to make sure that we all heard it correctly because I took it as.
Right.
I took it as Dan
I heard it as not only is Russ an alcoholic, but it's not even up for debate. Like he hits too many bullet points on the pamphlet.
Yeah,
it's a rough
right.
one.
But to me, that again is just doing anything for attention. Why not buy my staff dinner the last time? Because it makes a great story. I can tell. I don't care if it hurts their feelings. It's a great story. I can tell. That was my impression of him.
Goodness.
Yeah, maybe so.
All right. So I want to ask you one more. Gavin Spittle, program director at the time that you guys were brought over.
He's the Rubik's Cube of my life.
Explain that.
Because such a great guy. He helped me through my divorce. When I was going through a divorce and I was having a really rough time, he called me in his office one day and he said, listen, he says, I've been through this. He says, you know what the time of your life is now? He said, it's time for you to straighten up your tie, put your jacket back on, and go to her and say, this is over. Let's handle this like a bad business deal, and I got to move on. And that little pep talk changed my attitude about everything.
Really?
Such a great guy. And he used to take me to movies, when I was going through all this. And he was always my
Oh, is he
biggest.
your big brother?
I love Gavin to death.
In
I
a
love
movie?
Gavin. And then
Did you get an ice cream?
Was he married then, or was
it was
that
before he was
before he
married, and then
got
once he
married
got married, it was both times.
to Ryan?
Yeah.
Right.
Let me get this out there too, because I've seen that side of Gavin as well. Gavin and I famously have our issues.
Yes, I know.
Oh,
Honestly,
is it famous?
I think it's water under the bridge at this point, but whatever. When my son died, when my son passed away, just
Yeah.
before being birthed while moving, as far as having a boss in that moment, I couldn't have asked for a better one. Gavin was incredibly kind. Now, I only missed one day because I wanted to come back on because I loved what I was doing so much that I felt the only place where I could truly be comfortable is with you guys and talking about it. But Gavin was really wonderful. I mean, he really was. He was a very kind. He was everything you'd want in a boss in that moment. So
Yeah.
I can totally see him having that advice for you.
Yeah, and just a dear friend, and I love that guy. But the reason he's a Rubik's Cube is, so he had left when we switched to a sports station, and it wasn't even like a goodbye, like he was just done. And then I talked to him once, like 6 months later, and he was fine and everything. But then apparently he came back, or somehow Jasmine was working with him, and she said he was a monster to her.
Oh no.
Just not hitting on her or anything like that, but just mean and just not, on her, wasn't the person we knew before. So that's why, I mean, you've all had those friends or people who are great, but then 3 years pass and they do a 180. And I just don't get it. I just don't get it. So in my book, he's still, I love the guy, but
He's a Rubik's Cube.
he's a Rubik's Cube.
You don't know, you can't figure him out.
I can't figure it out.
All right.
What are you doing now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Where are you at now, and promote whatever the hell you want, Dean?
Okay. So the big thing is, COVID nearly killed me because no one was hiring comedy, but I'm coming back to do corporate gigs. If anyone wants, Dean at Dean Lewis, can I give my email out?
No.
All of it, please.
Of course you can.
Yeah. Dean at DeanLewisComedy.com. And by the way, Tartan Sauce is asking about Stickman. Thanks for mentioning. That's a movie I did long ago. I'm glad you saw it, man. So I'm doing corporate, but the big thing I'm doing right now is just comedy classes, stand-up classes. So I'm teaching them at the Improv. It's Monday nights from 6 to 9:30. It's a 6-week class, and then at the end you get to do a showcase at the Improv. And then I'll say this: there's so many comics locally, and then there's like Christella who's moved, and other people who've moved.
Tell me who's good. Give me the modern comedy scene, man. I used to be neck deep in it, and I've been out of it for a long time. Give me a few names of local people who are crushing it, who I got to see. I got one guy that I saw who I really like, but you tell me. You give me the names.
Okay. Well, Barry Whitewater is awesome.
Okay.
Megan King is another comic. She's great.
Okay.
She's crushing it. And these are people I know, but they're also from my workshop. Marissa Nieto, David Jessup. God, there's so many right now. But by the way, Ralph Barbosa, that kid, you guys know about him? He didn't take my class. He almost took it.
Why do I know that name? That name sounds
Ralph Barbosa is a local guy, but he in the last few months, he's gone. He was on an HBO special. He did the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. I see it on Facebook. He goes on, he'll go to a club for 4 shows and they end up booking 8 of them because he's one of the hottest comics in the country right now. So he's a local guy. Trying to think, there's another guy, Wes Corwin, who's fantastic. I like to think of women because there's a lot of great women out there too. Angela Owen is great. God, there's so many. If you hadn't asked, I could.
Yeah, right. Because I put you on the spot. It's like me in the grocery store. I'll sit in the car and I'll be like, I know everything that I need, and I refuse to make a list. But as soon as I walk into the store, the minute those doors go, whoop, I forget everything I need. I am screwed.
Exactly.
Oh, the biggest class, man. We got you. I know your schedule's really busy, but we should probably try and squeeze in 6 weeks of Dean's class.
Scott.
Listen, if you got, well, I've got one starting April 10th that's full, but I'm going to try and do 2 a month. So I'll let you guys know, but just I'll tell the price. So the price is $3.99.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's a lot, but you get 6 classes and a workbook, and I do a private session with everybody, and plus you're going up at the Improv, blah blah blah,
Get to hang out with Dean Lewis.
and hang out with Dean Lewis. Come on, but
that can't be bad.
there's an early registration thing where it goes down to $340 or $349, so it's only $350 really. But if you guys want to take it, I'll give you the same deal like when I was on the Jagger show. You guys just take it. There's no
Maybe
cost.
we should get a bunch of listeners. Yeah, we'll talk about that. That'd be fun. Maybe a bunch that's a good hang. Something.
Yeah, listeners, I need to pay, but you guys can come take it for free
well,
because I know you'll talk about it all the time.
What I'm saying is, yeah, to the listeners who are already paying. It's
Yeah.
kind of I don't know. We need to widen the circle. Dean Lewis, thank you so much for joining us. We thank you so much for being willing to do this. A lot of people have said they wanted to hear from you, and so now we've got you.
Yeah, well, anytime, man. And you guys are family. I know I'm bad about keeping in contact, and you get fired, you don't see people, but this was my Christmas, man. This was the best of the best.
Well, I think we should have a reunion. We should do a reunion as soon as we.
Could you imagine? Could you?
Yeah.
You know what we should do is go down to the old 1053 building and just
burn it
have
down?
a lot. I have a what is it? A bumper party or what do they call it?
Parking lot party.
Parking lot parties.
Tailgate.
Tailgate. Thank you very much.
I think we should just go and commit mass arson. We should just burn it to the ground. We just have you get beer and some drinks. It'll be fun.
But it already kind of looked like that had happened once.
No, why couldn't we? Yeah, it really did.
Shelter.
But honestly, like, so when we're ready to launch this this podcast and we're ready to start talking about it, and hopefully, we get a nice little buzz going concerning it locally. Why couldn't we throw a big party at the Improv? Why couldn't we have all you guys do stuff on stage and invite everybody back and talk to people on stage and then just have a family reunion? I think we should. Every radio station I've ever been a part of has had a family reunion except for this one.
They would love that. When Mondo and I got fired, we did a thing at the Improv and it was packed.
Mm-hmm.
We announced it. We just sent emails to everybody and like 300 people showed up.
Oh, the listeners would come. Oh, it would be.
Was that the Arlington one? Was that at Arlington?
Well, that was in Addison. And by the way, I know you got to go, but real quick, where's Big Dick Hunter? What's he doing?
We spoke to Dick a couple of weeks ago. He is in Vegas. He is. Did we talk about what he's doing? He's curating a spook museum. He's like in charge of a ghost museum. Some guy. He's partners with some guy who's a ghost hunter on A&E. It's like an A&E ghost hunter show, and the dude lives in Vegas, and Dick was doing comedy, and I guess they became friends, and now Dick is in charge of the A&E Ghost Hunter Museum.
Right, and I think he's been there a while because the last I heard Dick, he was a guest on my show because he was the one who found Lamar Odom OD'd at Dennis Hoff's Bunny Ranch in Vegas, or outside of Vegas a few years ago.
Yeah, Dean, did you know that?
I did not know that, but Big Dick Hunter, he was the Geraldo Rivera of Dallas.
You guys, so just the other night I was watching on Hulu. There was a new TMZ. TMZ presents Lamar Odom. It's like a new 1 hour special.
Right.
Have you seen it? Because it's relatively
new. But I want to. Yeah.
Okay, so TMZ presents the Lamar Odom investigation. Dick Hunter's all over it. It's like you hear the 911 call.
He was the guy who found him. He was the guy, our former coworker from Live 105.3.
All right, girls, you're gonna want to put him on a side. Girls, you're gonna want to stretch him out. He's got to need to be. Yeah, are you there? Are you still there? We're at the Bunny Ranch. We need an ambulance.
Oh man,
Lamar Odom. Girls, you're gonna want to stretch him out. It's crazy.
This is the NBA star / Kardashian gets found by Dick Hunter.
Oh my God, that makes me so happy. Tell him hi for me and Kelly and everybody too, Sybil and everybody.
Well, we'll have this reunion and we'll all be able to do it face to face.
All right, I'm waiting. I'm setting my calendar, waiting to hear from you. So much love to everybody, everyone who said hi. Much love to you.
Look at him.
And thank you for having me on, you guys. We'll talk soon.
Handsome as ever. There he goes.
Right,
Dean Lewis.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dean. Appreciate you. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Here we go. We got a new closing theme. Oh, you guys. Oh, thank you, James. Oh, James is gone.
Well, I'm just trying to graciously phase the show out. You don't have to.
That's fine.
Every time
Dr. Bombay.
That's fine.
All right, Dean's gone. Anything else you want to say now that Dean's gone?
No, we're fine. Both of you get out of here. All right. We've got a new closing theme. This is not new from John Hinckley, but I like it. I think we can have a John Hinckley song as a closing theme for the daytime
I just
show.
want to come back in and say that this is one of John Hinckley's worst songs. He has 2 better songs than this.
What are they?
Well,
Better
one of them's definitely Never Ending Quest.
Okay, that's a banger. That's an all-timer banger. Everything's gonna be all right. This is a beautiful song to end a show with. Have you even bothered to listen to the lyrics, John Hinckley?
Maybe I need to spend more time with it. I might be jumping the gun here. I just fell in love with his other stuff first.
Do you deny that the man has lived? The man has lived a life. The man has experiences that are truly unique.
Oh, did not. And how did he ever get the attention of Jodie Foster? Did she ever find out about that? Or?
I want to be there when they told him that she was gay. That's the thing. He did all of that. His gaydar was just not working at all. He had no clue that Jodie Foster was gay. It's a beautiful song. And now I'm going to let you listen to it. All right, thank you, folks. We'll see you tomorrow morning at noon. Full disclosure, man, I had to take these 2 my allergies are going nuts because of this weather. So I've been like coughing and all this stuff. I'm so skippy from these damn. So tomorrow I'm going to be coughing and stuff tomorrow on the noon show, but I'm not going to take these stupid pills before we do the show. Because, sometimes when I take these pills, I just there's like black holes that appear in my mind. We saw it twice on today's show. 2 questions that I had all loaded up in the chamber and ready to ask just evaporated. So I can't take these damn allergy pills. All right, love y'all. We'll see you tomorrow at noon. I'm Pugs Moran. That was James Parker, E the Artist. Many thanks to Dean Lewis for joining us today. Wonderful fella. That he is. All right, bye, folks. We'll see you tomorrow at noon. Have a good one. Bye.
Go